Raise your hand if you've ever felt guilty in your narcissistic relationships. Drop it in the comments. Raise your hand by yourself. Most people in narcissistic relationships feel guilty. Why? Because you think everything that's going wrong in the relationship is your fault. Every problem in the relationship is your fault. You feel guilty for labeling someone or thinking about someone you care about or is in your family as narcissistic. You feel guilty that maybe you aren't trying hard enough. You feel guilty that you might have said something or shared something sort of bad or negative about the narcissistic person to someone else in your world. You feel guilty that you can't make it work. You feel guilty that you can't figure it out. You feel guilty for not being good enough or being not good enough. You feel guilty for considering leaving the relationship. You feel guilty for leaving them. You feel guilty for breaking up a family. Please feel free to add any others I may have missed. You feel guilty for no longer talking to a parent. You get the idea. Guilt and shame are primary emotions for survivors in these relationships. It's the sense that you are doing something bad, that you are bad, and on top of that, you have to carry around the projected shame of the narcissistic person. And you also don't want people to see what a mess the relationship it is, or the shame that comes from feeling an ick about a situation in your life that other people don't see clearly and leaves you wondering like, well, no one else sees it this way, so maybe it's me. So let's go back to the guilt, because I say this as a therapist who has worked with clients experiencing these relationships for decades, is that guilt is the emotion that people who are in or have been in narcissistic relationships probably most share as a primary emotion for all the reasons I listed. Now, one place where the guilt can hit hard is the guilt that comes from believing that what the narcissistic person is saying about you is plausible. Like they're saying that I'm a bad person. They're saying that I'm not nice to other people. They're saying that I'm selfish. Hear that enough, it starts to feel like the truth. You wonder, maybe they're right. I mean, I do sometimes choose to do something that's important to me. Ugh, I feel so bad. But guilt is universal for anyone who is in one of these narcissistic relationships. It doesn't matter whether the thing that you did in the relationship is actually bad. What matters is that you think or believe that you did a bad thing. But the reality matters less than the fact that your guilt is what allows the relationship to persist. When we feel guilty, we'll often stay in the relationships. When we feel guilty, we'll often respond in a way that works for the narcissistic people or for other people too. And when we feel guilty, we think that we're as bad as them and their behavior. Guilt is the glue that keeps the narcissistic relationship together. I don't buy the BS that a person in a narcissistic relationship is a masochist or that anyone can leave a situation that they don't like. It's just not how attachment works. It's not how psychological safety and trauma work. It's not how basic human needs like belongingness work. And it's not how reality works. The psyche is going to always find a way to stay connected to relationships, even if they are unsafe at times, because attachment is that important. And especially if we're never able to build secure attachments. And what we may perceive as safe and as being a part of something, it may not be, but we stay attached to it. And the more that trauma has accumulated over a lifetime, the more safety-oriented our attachment systems become. Our decisions are more primitive and more safety-oriented rather than choices based on higher-order stuff such as respect or reciprocity or staying attached to someone with similar values. The more disruptions in attachment that we have had, the more our attachment styles may be less secure, more insecure, perhaps more anxious, more avoidant, which can make relationships a very fraught space and give us sort of more grist for the guilt mill, saying things like, well, I'm the one who starts acting crazy when he stops talking to me. I'm the one who becomes distant when I sense that they're lying to me. When survivors tell me they feel guilty, I work with them to determine what the function of that guilt is. First, we break down the feeling and what the bad thing they did was. I mean, we feel guilty because we think we did something bad, right? It's amazing how many survivors of narcissistic relationships believe that the bad thing that they did is that they had angry, critical thoughts. They didn't even express the thoughts. It's just that they had a thought in their head that was negative about the narcissistic person. Then we start breaking down how the guilt gets you stuck because it means that you are bad too, that you are part of the problem. The guilt, in an odd way, means that the relationship gets to persist because the idea of leaving one of these relationships can be terrifying, both for psychological reasons, for realistic reasons, and frankly, all the other reasons that leaving any relationship can be scary. So if we feel guilty, we can just focus on our bad stuff and not have to start taking on the other stuff like radical acceptance, which also brings up tons more guilt, radical awareness, realistic expectations. To see the relationship clearly can feel like we're being a bad person. But if we can view that guilt as a blockade, as a big gate that keeps us stuck, then we have a greater chance of knocking it down. Addressing the guilt doesn't mean that you leave the relationship. Addressing the guilt means that you see it clearly and you have your eyes wide open on why you are staying. Because your reasons are yours and they make sense to you. It could be children, it could be money, it could be culture, it could be realistic fears, it could be structural issues like immigration status. It doesn't change the narcissistic person's behavior one bit. But when you can see it clearly, you can be aware of what is not healthy in this relationship, what behaviors are not okay. You can stop taking responsibility for someone else's bad behavior. Listen, we take responsibility for other people's shit when we have to stay connected to them. It gives us a greater sense of control. It's not easy, but it can start cracking through the guilt to see it clearly. The guilt as glue model really applies when this is a family relationship we're talking about. Children feel terrible when they even have a passing thought that their parent is awful, especially when they're young. And that can start the guilt attachment cycle. The guilt means that the child almost naturally and reflexively takes on the shame of the parent's bad behavior and carries that shame and guilt and internalizes it into a structure of, I'm bad. The biggest problem with a lot of the ways we talk about narcissism is that it comes at the narcissistic relationship from the point of view of, you gotta leave. Listen, in an ideal world, you could. I mean it. That's an ideal aspirational thing. But for a lot of reasons, real reasons, we can't. We don't live in utopia. So, not even close. So understanding the function of guilt actually matters more if you're going to stay, because living in eternal guilt is not good for you. Guilt keeps you feeling small. It holds you back from being your true self, from aspiring, from trying new things, from trusting yourself, from connecting with new and healthy people, all the stuff that's essential to healing. Guilt leaves you feeling as though you are bad, that you're a person who does bad things. When you see the guilt, when you start realizing that some of the function of that guilt becomes almost like a way to stay in it and recognize that you actually can have something called agency, that you can make the choice to stay, but have your eyes open, that becomes a different game. You now understand what this is. It still sucks, don't get me wrong, but it takes a different toll on you. Once you see it clearly, say this sucks, but you may be able to seek out different supports, ways of coping. When you are aware and feel like you're making an active choice to stay, rather than living in guilt and that passively keeping you stuck. Passively staying is not good for you. Agency, saying, okay, I'm staying for these reasons, is healthier. Think about any narcissistic relationship you have been in or are in, and think about the guilt you felt. To what degree, now that we're unpacking it this way, how did this guilt function? Did it block you from seeing the relationship clearly? Did it keep you stuck? Did it create this sense of false equivalence in your mind that I'm bad too? Maybe I'm the problem too, so we two problem people can stay together? Seeing guilt as this really cruel, sadistic glue can help us understand why this theme of guilt, this dynamic of guilt, this emotion of guilt is so central to these relationships. You have to remember that you can see a narcissistic relationship clearly and stay. You can see it clearly and you can go. Guilt can keep you stuck, and it may leave you doubting if you did the right thing by leaving. That's the challenge with guilt. It's like taking your glasses off and you can't see clearly. All of that to say that taking on the narcissistic person's shame and believing that we are the one who's behaving badly is a relationship for getting sick, for getting stuck, for abandoning ourselves and making our choices not from a place of agency and awareness, but from fear and confusion. If you can stay in a if you feel like I've chosen to stay in this narcissistic relationship, and I understand what I'm doing. I want to be under the same roof as my kids. Right now, financially, it's untenable. In my culture, this is going to cut me off from other supports. You're aware of what you're doing and you see it clearly. I'm not saying this is an easy line to walk. It's very exhausting. Caring for yourself as you go through this becomes very important. But it's very different than, we're both bad, and that's why I'm staying. You're selling yourself a false story, and that really takes a toll on your health. So I hope that helps you understand guilt better. It's a tough one. Thanks again.